Welcome back to Code Hive, the place where we make it work, make it right, and make it fast. So in the previous video, we talked about how to create a table, just a simple table using Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And in today's video, I want to talk more about creating a table using constraints, right? So in the previous video, we created a table called employees, and I showed you guys two ways in which you can insert values into the table and how to check data that's in the table. So on today's video, we're going to be talking about constraints, which in simple terms is actually how you can use 3 or more tables where one table has foreign keys that take from other tables' primary keys, right? So basically, yeah, we will talk about it throughout the video, so just stay tuned. So we're just going to continue from this one over here. So I just want to go to the database that we've created. And okay, so we have a table called employees, right? So I want to insert 2 more tables, right? So the first table is just going to be a simple table, and then the next table that I want to insert will now be the one where we're going to use constraints. Okay, so let's jump right to it. So I just want to create a table called cards, right? And in that table, I want to have a card ID, which is varchar, and I want it to be a length of 10, not null. And card. Okay, and then I want to have card color, which I also want it to be varchar. I want it to be the length of 10 and not null. Okay, and then the last column that I want is card description, which I want to be varchar and then a length of 30 and not null. So I want this one, the card ID, to be the primary key. Okay, so primary key. So now that we've created that table, we can create another one. So now this is where constraints come in, right? So a simple create table and whatever name you want to use. So I'm just going to say employee card. So basically constraints, like I said, is having a column or columns in that specific table that is existing in other tables. So that's what constraints is all about. So let's just look into it again. Okay, so create table employee card. So the reason why I'm naming it employee card is because I'm going to use the employees table and the cards table. So it just makes sense to call it employee card, but you can call it whatever you feel comfortable with. So the first one that I want, the first column that I want is employee card ID, right? So employee card ID, I want it to be varchar with the length of 10 and not null. Okay, so you would have noticed that when we're creating the cards table, we said primary key to the specific primary key, and we said primary key to the specific primary key in the employees table. But now I just want to keep it like this for video purposes and constraints purposes. Okay, so the other column that I want is date made, which has a date data type and not null. Another column that I want is collection date and date. Okay, so now I want the card ID as well. So now where does the card ID come from? The card ID comes from the cards table. So I want it to be varchar 10. So it must be the same length and the same data type. Okay, and also not null. And the other one that I want is the employee ID, right? The employee ID, which comes from the employees table. So the employee ID. So the employee ID was also varchar 10. So we keep it like that. Varchar 10 and not null. Okay. So now we about to approach the constraints. So the first constraint that I want to mention is the primary key constraint, because you see in this video, in this table actually, we didn't specify the primary key. So we're going to create a constraint. So constraint pk for primary key, and then you're going to name the constraint whatever you would like. So I'm just going to say employee card. Let me say employee card. Okay. And then you specify that it is a primary key, and you specify what is the primary key. So the primary key is the employee card. So you say employee card ID. So that is the primary key. Okay. So that is the first constraint. It's the primary key constraint. And then the other constraints that we need is foreign key constraints, because you can see that the card ID and the employee ID are coming from the cards table and the employees table. So for the card ID, right? So your constraint keyword, now FK for foreign key, and then you're going to call it whatever. So you can say emp ID, right? Or let's start with the card ID actually. So just say card ID. And then now primary key, no, foreign key, because this is a foreign key. So foreign key. And what is the foreign key? The foreign key is the card ID. And where does the card ID come from? It references cards, which is the table where card ID comes from. So it references cards and what? Card ID. Okay, so what this is actually saying is that you're creating a foreign key constraint, which you call it card ID. It's a foreign key. What is the foreign key? The card ID. Where does the card ID come from? It references the cards table, because it comes from the cards table. It comes from the cards table. And then what is the primary key from the cards table? The card ID. But in here, it's a foreign key. So that's basically how constraints work. So the other constraint that we have is the emp ID. So the employee ID, which is also a foreign key, right? What is the foreign key? The employee ID, which references what table? The employees table. And in the employees table, what is the primary key? The employee ID. So that is how we use foreign keys. So that is now your table created, which uses constraints. So if we just run this and we execute, then it's completed. And if we run the employee card and we execute, it's executed completely. So if we just drop down by the create tables and we expand, then we should see the employee card and the employees table that we have just created. So that is how you use constraint. So now we're going to look at how to insert data into the table. So I think this is just simple. So I'm just going to insert one set of data per table that we have just created. So insert into the cards table, right? Values, I'm going to use the short method. So card 101, this is green card, and it's the cleaner card. Okay, and then insert into employee card values. So I want EC1 as the employee card ID 2021 0410. So this is when the card was issued, and when was the card collected? 2021 0415. And the last insert that I want, well, second last, is card 101, and the last one that I want is emp 102. Okay. And if we just close that, and if we just run these two statements, so you just select both and you say execute, one row affected. And like I said last time, if you want to view data from a table, you'll just say select all from the table name. So in this situation, we want to see the cards table, and select all from the employee card table. And if we just run both these statements, or let me just run one at a time. So cards, we just added it. It's card 101, the green card, and card cleaner card. So it's for the cleaner. And then select all from employee card. Employee card ID is EC1, date made, collection date, card ID, and employee ID. So this is how you use constraints.